It's Thursday night, and you know what that means. Talking Jersey City is live right now on Facebook via StreamYard, also on YouTube, as well as LinkedIn, Instagram, and folks, of course, all our great social media platforms. It is Thursday, March the 20th. I am Fernando Uribe, the host of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe on Jersey First TV, which you can check out every Monday night live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And he is Aaron Morrill, the distinguished editor of the Jersey City Times. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Fernando, good to see you. How have you been?
Listen, March is rolling right along, and listen, the weather's getting warmer, the days are a little bit longer, right, after daylight savings time, and I don't know, man, it's the first day of spring, and again, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now. Again, it takes 5 seconds. I timed it myself. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Talking Jersey City here as we're bringing you the best news about what's going on in Hudson County's largest city, and nobody does it better than the Jersey Times and Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Speaking about spring, let's spring right into it, Aaron. And again, great piece you put out there concerning the grand jury declining to charge cops in a Patterson case tied to Andrew Washington. Why is this so significant, brother?
Well, the Andrew Washington case, for those who may not remember, was a situation where you had a man with in mental crisis, having a mental health crisis back in 2023. He had a history of psychosis, but was generally beloved in the neighborhood and by his family. His family calls the police because they're concerned that he's not taking his meds and he's acting out. The police, first, the mental health professionals or EMTs responded, and they called the police because they felt it was potentially a dangerous situation. And the police stood outside Andrew Washington's door for about an hour talking to him. This was all captured by body cams, and this can all be seen. There are links to it on our website. This was all captured on body cam. And you can hear Mr. Washington, screaming back at the police somewhat incoherently. The police are sort of pleading with him to come out and to calm down and yada yada. In the end, the police force open his door, and he comes out with a knife. And one cop has a taser. Shoots him with the taser. At the same time, another cop has a gun and shoots him with the gun, killing him. It became a huge problem here in Jersey City. People were obviously, understandably, very upset about it, feeling that kind of force was not necessary, that response by the police. It became a cause célèbre in Jersey City.
Aaron, by the way, real quick, I'm sorry, I'll let you finish, but was that also, I think, in the news cycle as well? Because I think there was some rumor that perhaps either the city or the Attorney General's office in Trenton was kind of dragging their feet.
Well, I put out an article about that,
okay.
So I'll tie that in.
Sure.
So I'll try and speed this up. But what happened 5 months before Andrew Washington was shot, a guy Najee Seabrook was shot and killed under almost identical circumstances in Patterson. And what happened is the legislature months later passed the Seabrook Washington Act, which provided money for mental health response teams to come in to municipalities and deal with these situations. So there is a law in the books named after Najee Seabrooks and Andrew Washington. And in fact, money has been allocated to put teams into place in some of the bigger cities in New Jersey. But what has been unclear is whether or not the police would be charged in this case, in the Seabrook case or in the Washington case. And this week, Attorney General Platkin let it be known that the grand jury in the Seabrooks case, which was identical to the Washington case, had voted no bill, which means in legal parlance, the grand jury heard evidence and they declined to indict the police officers who shot Najee Seabrooks in Patterson. Now, I had published an article in the Jersey City Times about how the Attorney General appeared to be acting slowly in the Washington case, that the case was taking longer to resolve than other cases that that office had handled. And lo and behold, a week later, we got the news that in the Seabrook case, there was no bill and the police officers were not going to be charged. So the case has a direct relationship to the Washington case, and I should say we don't know, may presage what's going to happen in the Washington case. The facts are almost identical. In both cases, the family called for help with a family member that was experiencing a mental health crisis. In both cases, police responded, attempted to talk to the person who was experiencing this mental health crisis, and in both cases, the person came through the door with a knife, and in both cases, the police shot and killed the person. So identical cases involving Black men with mental health issues being shot and killed by police. We wrote an editorial after Andrew Washington was shot, taking the position that the police overreacted. At the very least, that the police officers on the scene were badly supervised, that there was no need at that moment to go to bang down his door, and that it was foreseeable that he would come through the door with a knife. This had happened to Najee Seabrooks just 5 months before, and it happened in Jersey City several years before. A woman was shot and killed under almost identical circumstances by police responding to a mental health crisis. So this was not something that the upper brass of the Jersey City Police Department were not aware of. This was a situation, a scenario that we felt they should have planned for, that there were ways of subduing somebody, even with a knife, that did not include deadly physical force. So it will be very interesting to see what the grand jury does in the Washington case. But if the Seabrook case is any guide, it is more likely than not that that the police officers in Jersey City will not be charged. We're not taking a position on whether they should be charged or not, but it is very interesting. And if they are charged, it'll be interesting as well, because the facts are so similar, almost identical. But, it actually dovetails well with the no confidence vote that actually was passed in the Jersey City Municipal Council last week concerning Public Safety Director James Shea. He is the guy that ultimately is in charge and makes the decisions about how things are done in the Jersey City Police Department. And it's taken a while. We wrote an editorial a year ago, at least, calling for his resignation or dismissal. And now the Jersey City Council has basically called for his resignation as well. Although it was a small majority because of people abstaining. But at any rate, all relates to public safety and the killing of Andrew Washington. What interested me also was that there was relatively little interest from our readers in the Washington case. I was surprised by that. I can look and see what people are reading. It was a big issue. Police brutality was a massive issue during the George Floyd episode. Andrew Washington has not really risen to the top of issues among people in Jersey City. For some reason, it doesn't have the same resonance that the George Floyd case had, which was not in Jersey City. So it's a curious thing. So that's.
Well, here's a variable for our viewers, I think, that has kind of gone under the microscope, especially with these cases, though, because if you remember, I think this happened back in 23, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay. What was interesting, though, from people I just talked to statewide, if if you remember, shortly after that case, and obviously, just a couple of years after the George Floyd incident, you started hearing a lot of chatter, man, about the necessity of a civilian complaint review board. Remember that? Remember those conversations? You kept hearing about that, right? And you started hearing a lot of chatter locally, whether or not it's going to happen at the state level, and then whether it should happen at the municipal level. And here's something that's interesting. I think our viewers may have forgotten. The reason it got basically swept under the rug in 2023, it was an election year. And that was like legislative races. And a lot of legislators in Trenton, Aaron, didn't even want to go to bat for this in an election year. They thought it was way too polarizing. If you remember, it created a lot of discourse about, well, wait a minute, if we're going to create a civilian complaint review board, what type of board is this going to be? Will it have subpoena power? Who is it going to be consisting of, right? And that was a lot of chatter in 2023. And I remember this distinctly. I talked about this on my show repeatedly. And I talked to people, insiders statewide, that said, hey, listen, there was a lot of chatter about this based on these incidents that happened, even locally. I remember even someone like James Solomon was talking about the importance of a civilian complaint review board. And I was one of the few journalists, with any voice with a podcast that said, listen, I'm all for that. I like accountability. Obviously, we like seeing body cams on police officers. We think there should be more training. We think there should be more de-escalation training when they go, obviously to the academies, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest concern I had, and again, you're an attorney, so I think you might appreciate this take I have, is I'm all for these boards, but I'm always careful about who we have on these boards. I want professionals on these boards. Having been, a probation officer myself, having worked in corrections, having worked as an investigator, having worked as an academic, like, these are the people I want. I want attorneys. I want, people in our penal system working. I don't want, again, not to sound like the crazy conservative here, but I don't want these local activists, Aaron, that are just, sometimes looking for clicks and attention. I don't want these sort of people on review boards. And I think that was sort of maybe where the rubber met the road about, hey, it's a good idea, but I think it got swept under the rug. And let's be honest, it's an election year again, assembly-wise. This isn't going to see a light of day in Trenton anytime soon.
Well, I think there were a couple of problems. I think there was a legal problem with setting these up. If my memory serves me correctly, Newark, which created a civilian complaint review board, was swatted down by the court, saying you don't have the authority to create this board. So right now, I think the law has to change before there can be such boards. Ultimately, with a case like Andrew Washington, this is not a civilian complaint review board. This is somebody who died.
Sure,
this is a case where the attorney general literally has to go to the grand jury, because you're talking about potentially, you potentially have homicide charges in a case like this. So this is not going to be handled by a civilian complaint review board. I think the civilian complaint review board, if it has utility, for these low level interactions between the police and the community, where somebody is roughed up, somebody is is spoken to improperly. It's a lower level police misconduct cases. But it's not a panacea. I know from New York City that many of these cases are found not to be substantiated, and the civilian complaint review board is not seen as having much in the way of teeth or doing much. So it's not a panacea for people who are critical of the police. Ultimately, from my experience in criminal justice, and I worked as a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor, it's about training police. It's about great leadership in the police department. And I think that's where Frank Gilmore and the people that voted with him on this recent resolution are coming from. That the Jersey City Police Department has not had great leadership. Crime is up in a city that has gotten richer, wealthier. Generally, you see crime go down in a wealthier neighborhood. At least violent crime goes down, and aggravated assaults in Jersey City are up. So and then you have the Washington case. So it's anybody's guess why Mayor Fulop has not parted company with James Shea, but it's going to be easy pickings for Fulop's adversaries running for governor, to point out that the crime situation in Jersey City has not improved under his mayoralty. In fact, it's gotten worse in some areas.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's with a lot of money put into it, and that's with the city getting wealthier. So, there's a lot going on here. There are many aspects to this, but the Andrew Washington case was a particularly sad one, and it was sad to see so little response, at least on our social media feed, and in terms of our readership, so little response to the news that Najee Seabrook's case was voted as a no true bill, and we'll see if it changes. But it speaks to the change in atmosphere or just generally. Right now, the defund the police thing. You're not going to hear that from anybody. You're not going to hear even liberal Democrats talking about cutting police right now. I don't think. There might be a handful. Maybe AOC is doing it, but there aren't many.
Yeah.
Because right now people are feeling insecure. They're feeling like we need more cops.
Sure.
Things got really bad during the pandemic in terms of homicides and crime.
Yep.
So that's not a popular position to take, and I don't see any advantage for any politician to be calling for civilian complaint review boards, especially if you don't see a groundswell from the street, as it were, or from grassroots. And I'm not hearing it even from the activists in Jersey City. I'm not hearing that. I'm not getting op-ed pieces from Jersey City activists on police brutality. That's just not what people are talking about.
No, listen, you're absolutely right. And listen, great job again with this story. And I'm sure, again, I know you'll be continuing to follow up on this in the weeks ahead. And speaking about, and real quick, since you mentioned Attorney General Plotkin, which kind of brings us to our next story here. I know you're reporting about, obviously, the polling when it comes to who's recognizable in this Democrat primary. One thing that really alarmed me, man, and I really want to get your thoughts on this before we jump into this article. Stephen Fulop came out publicly and said that should he, win the primary and go on to become our next governor, God forbid, he would keep Plotkin as our Attorney General. Folks, this is a family show, but I don't mind saying it. We can get away with it. This should scare the shit out of you. If when Stephen Fulop said this out loud, that he want to keep Matt Plotkin, I think Matt Plotkin's been an awful Attorney General for multiple reasons. To keep him one more minute in 2026, I think is a mistake. But, again, this is something that Stephen Fulop, I'm sure, is going to have to answer for on the campaign trail because he's already put that out there. But speaking of which, real quick, I just want to get your thoughts on that if you had heard that news.
Well, I think there's some troubling aspects to him coming out and saying that. We know that there have been investigations into City Hall, into the Fulop administration that have gone nowhere and that feel unresolved, for some people. We know about the O'Donnell case. We know about the straw voters. This has been reported in other media that a law firm got a contract with the city after the principals of that law firm were able to funnel money through straw donors to the Fulop campaign. That was, and nothing has ever come of that. So there's it feels strange that he would telegraph this. It's not as if people know who Matt Plotkin is, the average person on the street. This is not like when Steve Fulop goes out and works in a restaurant like he did the other day and does a publicity, cameo, that he can run on, his X account or wherever, his Facebook account. This is not this is sort of insider baseball. Him saying to somebody, hey, I got your back. That's what I hear when he says that. I've got your back, Matt Plotkin. Thank you for something. We don't know what.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It sounds, it's the kind of thing that makes a journalist want to dig. And we're not saying that anything untoward has happened. Nothing's been proven here.
Sure.
But it is curious.
It certainly is, and it's something to keep an eye out for on the campaign trail. And speaking of which, story I know you published recently as well. Great piece here. Talking about sort of like, and I love the opening sentences here. Hidden in the findings of a poll released earlier in the month by Fairleigh Dickinson University was a small piece of good news for Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, when the 6 candidates for the Democrat gubernatorial nomination were judged by those who recognized their names. Sherrill had the highest percentage reporting that they held a favorable view of the candidate. Now, again, folks, if you haven't checked it out, jcitytimes.com. And by the way, folks, if you just joined us live here on Facebook Live, your StreamYard, it takes 5 seconds. Trust me, I've counted. Like, comment, share, and subscribe on Facebook, on our YouTube page. Share it. It doesn't cost you anything. And speaking about not really costing anything, folks, you know what? We drink a lot of coffee. We need to wake up in the morning. We like to have a little bagel or a Danish or a buttered roll, whatever it is we're doing in the morning when we're commuting. Guess what? For just less than $3 a month, you can subscribe to quality local news that's brought to you by the Jersey City Times. Again, you can go on jcitytimes.com. You can subscribe in the upper right-hand corner there. And again, for less than $3, you can get quality news delivered right into your inbox. You'll have inside stories that nobody else will get in Hudson County politics and also in news. Folks, again, it doesn't take very much. It takes very little, less than $3 a month. That's all it needs for you to be informed of what's going on in Jersey City during this election cycle, during everything going on, not just in politics, but in arts and culture and real estate and quality of life, everything brought to you by the Jersey City Times. Again, at jcitytimes.com. Don't forget to subscribe today. I won't take a commission on that one, bro. But
thanks for the plug. I like it.
But listen, it's interesting because, this race is, again, we're less than 3 months away from the primary coming up on June 10th, and different polling. I think there's a new poll coming out. This past week, I was speaking actually to one of my good friends, David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. And this past Monday, coincidentally, on St. Patrick's Day, was the deadline with the ELEC, right, with the ELEC Commission about the next debates coming up and who is, sort of submitting bids and proposals. And we're going to find out. Obviously, we know the New Jersey Globe has the inside track, but we know NJ Spotlight News, News 12 New Jersey. We'll find out. But certainly the candidates are going to have to debate at some point, maybe sometime in April. Maybe sometime mid to late April, who knows, maybe after Easter and Passover. So it'll be interesting. But what I found really peculiar about the poll, though, man, is that, Representative Sherrill, along with Gottheimer, are in Washington, right? So, they're sort of splitting their time between House votes, touring New Jersey, and they're kind of treading like very interesting waters of, they want to rally up their base in New Jersey. They want to rally up Democrat voters, right? They want to be a lot about resist, and fighting Trump on everything. But at the end of the day, though, it's like, Aaron, last week on NJ.com, I mean, property taxes went up again. It's, we're leading the country with the highest property taxes, and they're up over 10 grand now on average. Yes, gas is going down, but guess what? Because of the gas tax in the last phase, on December the 1st, we're paying 61 cents more per gallon on gasoline. And right now, again, it's been going down. Without the gas tax, we're probably looking at like 205, 210 for gas. That's not the case. The tolls.
You sound like you might be a Republican, Fernando.
What's that?
You sound like you could be a Republican.
Well, no, I mean, but the point is, I think what's interesting about this polling with Sherrill having the most favorables compared to Fulop and Baraka and obviously Spiller and Sweeney, along with Gottheimer, is that this primary, listen, notoriously, these primaries get low turnout to begin with. Someone's going to win with 15 to 16, maybe 17% of the vote. That's not a lot. But I found it interesting about Sherrill having the most favorables when, she's been one of the more, I wouldn't say super progressive votes in Washington, but she's certainly up there. She's certainly not as moderate as, let's say, Josh Gottheimer, for example.
Yeah, they're pretty close. I think they're pretty close in their moderation. That's the sense I get. I don't follow all of their votes, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I mean, what I took from that poll, and the poll actually wasn't released initially. In fact, it wasn't released to anybody else. I actually asked the poll author, Dan Casino at Fairleigh Dickinson, about the favorability, and he mentioned that the favorability was the number of people that had a favorable impression of a given candidate over the total number of people, a total number of Democrats. And I said, well, what about if you were to look at, what if you were to look at how favorable people felt looking at only those who knew of the candidate? So in other words, if you know Cheryl, how do you feel about her? If you know of Fulop, how do you feel about her? If you know of Gottheimer or Baraka? And so I thought it was interesting, although Casino didn't agree with me that it was that as interesting. I thought it was interesting that she did better when people knew who she was or knew of her. That in other words, she was providing maybe a better user experience for those who used her than Fulop and Baraka. And so to know her was to love her or to like her more than the other candidates, even Baraka. Remember, Baraka came out on top on favorabilities, but that was driven, I think, and I think Casino would agree with this, that was driven because he's got so much more recognition. Name recognition is incredibly important. And Cheryl definitely has lower name recognition. And that's why she had initially lower favorability numbers, because fewer people knew of her. But if you know of her, there's a higher chance that you like her than you will like Fulop or Baraka, according to that data. So I just thought it was interesting. What it did was it provides a ray of hope for her, even though her name, she's not as well known yet. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting thing. I got a little pushback from one Fulop supporter online who always pushes back when I put anything that's negative about Steve Fulop, calling it hateful. Then because this was this, but I didn't, it was a knock on not only Fulop, but it was a knock on Baraka and everybody else. Yeah. It was mainly pointing out that Cheryl does best when people know her.
So, well, it's interesting. It's interesting about Cheryl because I think that of the 6 Democrats, right, running for the June 10th primary, I think she's the one that poses the most problems statewide later on in the fall, whoever the Republican nominee is going to be. And I think, I suspect it's probably going to be Jack Ciattarelli. I think he's got enough name recognition, and I think he can get across the finish line compared to his counterpart, Bill Spadea. That's just my prediction. I'm not hateful. I'm not.
He's a stronger candidate.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think, listen, and coincidentally, this upcoming weekend in Atlantic City is the annual New Jersey GOP Republican Summit. So it's, a lot of speakers are coming. We got Vivek Ramaswamy and Tyrus from Fox News, and a lot of big names are coming to Atlantic City to speak at this event for 2 days. And a lot of insiders call me, what do you think? Are you going? I'm like, I'm not really interested in going. The NJGOP, believe it or not, Aaron, the NJGOP doesn't like me very much. I mean, I'm very critical of them. Because I just don't like a lot of their, I think their ground game, and I think they do it very poorly. But the point is that I think that if anyone they need to start attacking now, I think it's Cheryl, because Cheryl most likely is going to win the primary. And let's be honest, man, New Jersey is a weird state. It's purple. Yeah, it's blue as Windex up here where you and I live, and it's red in other areas. But, Democrats are going to kind of go with that playbook. Hey, servicewoman in the Navy, Air Force. She's a woman. I mean, listen, identitarian politics sometimes in New Jersey kind of gets you across the finish line. And if you're not attacking her early now on a lot of her positions that you can go to town on her on, I don't know why Republicans or people that are anti-Cheryl aren't, even her fellow Democrats in the primary. You should be really trying to cut her legs out before she gains momentum. Because
if the GOP was smart in New Jersey, I mean, they would put someone forward that will break with Trump, a moderate Republican. I mean, Trump is so unpopular in New Jersey. I mean, you're just not going to get. He's more popular than he was in the last election. Obviously, he did better. But I still think anybody who toes the Trump line in New Jersey on the Republican side simply doesn't have, a real strong chance, because right now people are just going to vote against. They're just going to vote against Trump. That's why you see all the Democratic candidates, and you see everything now. Yeah. From speaking of Matt Platkin, every day I get a press release from his office about how he's taking on Trump. And that's true with Andy Kim. That's true with Rob Menendez. This is true with everybody. Everybody,
Right.
you gain you whip up your base by going after Trump because Trump is so
Sure.
unpopular.
Sure.
So I think if you as somebody who's critical of the GOP, I know you like Donald Trump, but I think you have to have you've got to have a moderate Massachusetts, Maryland type governor, to run in New Jersey that's going to be independent. And then I think a Republican would have a shot at it because people are sick of paying high taxes. People don't like the high taxes. They don't like the cost of living. They don't like the way the schools are run. There are a lot of things that people are upset about that a Republican could really benefit from. But as long as they're if they're a Trumper, I think they're in trouble. I mean, that's my personal feeling.
Well, I'll just say that I think there's a lot of moving parts, right? Like right now, Democrats are polling nationally as a party as low as it's ever been, right? Like at least in my adult life. I mean, it was a really bad number the other day. So,
horrible.
I mean, when CNN and MSNBC have to bite their lip to read these poll numbers about the Democrat Party, I'm sitting there laughing. I'm like, ooh, it must suck to be in the green room.
Yeah.
At the poll.
I mean, and the Democratic Party deserves it. I mean, they've done a terrible job, horrible job. And,
now, again, to your point in New Jersey, I think that I think there has to be some. You have to tread carefully here. I think that there are parts of New Jersey where the president is unpopular. You're right. You're absolutely right on that. But I think also, too, again, there needs to be, if the same energy comes out this year that came out last November with vote by mail, early voting, again, the president came within 5 points of winning New Jersey, and that hasn't happened since George H.W. Bush in '88. So it's now, again, the same energy has to come out. And I think, should Cheryl be the nominee? And I've said this to a lot of operatives who say, Fernando, what do you think? I said, I understand you want to have your grievances about resisting Trump. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, like all someone like me has to say is, well, is Donald Trump in Trenton for the last 20 years raising your property taxes? Yeah. And the budget has ballooned up.
Well, for you, I hope that works. I don't think it's going to. I think I think New Jersey is still a center, is still a predominantly Democratic state. Center left. And, I think it's going to be very tough. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I guess to be in the Republican Party these days, it's very difficult to buck Trump. But I think that in a state like this is the only way you're going to get elected.
No, listen.
But anyway, let's talk about Jersey City.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And obviously, another thing also mentioned too about Jersey City, and an interesting name kind of resurfacing, Rolando Lavaro running for city council on James Solomon's slate. And I got to tell you, man, Rolando Lavaro is a guy that I got to know back in 2012 into 2013. And he's a guy that, a lot of people, as Philip became mayor in 2013, and, his star was on the rise politically. Another name you heard a lot about, Aaron, was Rolando Lavaro. He was council president. And a lot of people kept saying to me, hey, listen, if Philip chooses to run for governor in 2017, watch out for Lavaro. Lavaro might be that guy that kind of steps up to the plate here. And when Philip chose not to do that, obviously Rolando Lavaro still remained very visible in Jersey City politics. But that, eventually, like anything else, erodes quickly. But it seems like some time away from Grove Street has done Rolando some good. And apparently he's, hitching his wagon to another progressive in James Solomon. And I wasn't surprised about this ticket, but I was surprised that Lavaro wanted to come out of at least political hibernation, man.
I just heard, if Rolando's listening, please don't take this the wrong way. I just heard that Anthony Weiner is coming back. So there's something about being in politics. Some people just can't leave it, and Rolando, I'm not comparing you to Anthony Weiner in any way, but, I think, you see these people just come back for more. I think it gets into their blood. And I think Rolando is that kind of person. And he became, at the end of his career in the city council, the only city councilman that would go to meetings and ask tough questions. I mean, James to some degree, but Rolando was consistently cross-examining, the department heads about budgets and about various things. He took his job. Yeah, this was after he split with Steve Fulop, and he became sort of a lone wolf. He and James became kind of, the loyal opposition. Rolando was pushing Fulop on all kinds of stuff at meetings. He was slowing meetings down. He's saying, "Okay, wait a second, let's talk about this. Let me ask you about that." You watch some of these old meetings, and you can see people just getting impatient because Rolando is asking questions and not letting them just go right to the rubber stamp on these ordinances and resolutions. So I think he acquitted himself well at the end of his career on the city council. The rap on Rolando was that for the first 3/4 of his career on the city council, he was basically carrying water for Steve Fulop. That's if you're not a Fulop fan, that is, and that he was just kind of a rubber stamp on his own right. He would tell you that he and I wrote a lot about him. I spent a lot of time talking to him. He would tell you that he thought that he could get certain things done by being part of the Fulop administration, and he was proud of certain things. And when it became impossible, he broke with Fulop, and he tells some stories about Fulop really coming down on him, bullying him after he asked Fulop about certain funding of parks and plans that Fulop had. They broke. He was quite articulate about what it was like to go up against Fulop. He will say that I always believed I was the city council president. I had the right to ask certain questions, and when I asked those questions, when I held something up, I would be shot down. Fulop took away his car keys at one point. To get back at him is kind of a Trumpy thing to do. He was very vindictive about certain things when Rolando went up against him. But anyway, it's interesting. He's running for an at-large seat. Those are tough seats to win unless you're part of a slate, and I guess the ballot's going to look different this year. I haven't seen what it's going to look like, but people, somebody like Amy DeGees, who took Rolando's place, got in because she was part of Team Fulop, right? I mean, that's how she got in.
Yeah.
Same with Daniel Rivera, and these people don't have followings across the city. You get into that, it'll be interesting to see how the new ballot, which I haven't seen, plays into all of this.
Well, I'll say this. I think, well, first of all, it might look like a scroll from something out of like Game of Thrones. I don't envy Junior Maldonado coming up into the fall when like that ballot's going to be like, it might look, like kind of ridiculous, I think.
I don't know how the uninitiated are going to vote. How are you going to know, if you're not a political junkie, how are you going to know who to vote for? If you don't have, I understand perhaps you're going to be able to, the slogan you'll be able to have one slogan for all the candidates, but not the name of the candidate, the head of the ticket, that is. So there won't be, Team Fulop. There will be, Rage Against the Machine or whatever Fulop's, handle is now.
Good band, by the way. Kind of remember concert back in the day. A good band there for anyone that's, I'm kind of showing my age there. Rage Against the Machine. So,
And I won't charge Fulop for that idea, by the way.
There you go.
That would be a great one for his campaign.
But I got to tell you, man, these tickets, again, they're starting to really marinate. They're starting to get finalized. I think it's really hard to, look at who's got the advantage when it comes to the council races, right? When it comes to those tickets. I mean, listen, again, I'm not sure if you saw my interview with Tom Zuppa a couple of weeks ago. I've been saying it for years now. I mean, when Tom Zuppa lost, he didn't get into the runoff back in 21 between Boggiano and I think Kevin Bing. I kept telling people, hey, I get it. Zuppa took an L there, but he's going to stay like in the trenches. He's going to remain visible. And sure enough, I was right. Again.
Tom Zuppa has the look. There's something about Tom Zuppa.
Yeah.
I don't know him well, but former prosecutor. He kind of has the look of a guy that should be rising into an executive position.
Yeah, I would argue he's going to. I think. Yeah. Listen, this race is going to be very tough.
Yeah.
Boggiano's got a really, really good following in that ward. He's he's been in the wars, man. He gets it. He understands the ground game that's necessary. And we'll see, obviously, with that race. But again, you mentioned Danny Rivera. I got to tell you, I think what Rivera's been able to do in recent years, yeah, he was under that Fulop umbrella for some time, but I think he's developed a really good following. I went to a fundraiser of his at Hudson House a couple months ago. I got to tell you, it was a packed place. And I know Bill O'Day has an event coming up next Tuesday on the South Side, which I think will be interesting. I think Rivera is one of those guys that has some political capital, Aaron, that, he might get across the finish line, but there's very few races here from all the tickets and all these candidates that there isn't a definitive favorite. Again, other than, Gilmore, Rivera, I think Denise Ridley. Those are kind of those incumbent names that, you kind of figure have at least a little bit of an advantage because of the name recognition.
Yeah.
But don't sleep on everybody else. I mean, there's a lot of good people, Tom Zupa, Pam Johnson. You certainly have, people in the Jim McGreevy ticket. We've been talking about this. So it's only mid-March, but it's going to heat up very, very quickly because, like anything else, the summer's coming. And let's be fair, man. After the primary, I think a lot of people are going to be exhausted. And there might be a little attention deficit in Jersey City, especially because of the summer. And that obviously works against the candidates, but they don't stop working.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. Great piece there, folks. Again, if you haven't checked it out, again, about Rolando LaVar, check it out there on jctimes.com. And folks, again, if you just joined us live right now, hey, like, comment, and share tonight's episode here of Talking Jersey City. I'm Fernando Uribe, the host of Real Talk with Jersey First TV. And he's Aaron Morrill, the distinguished editor of the Jersey City Times. Again, folks, for less than $3, all it takes is that to subscribe to excellent local news in Jersey City. Folks, you spend money on something every day, whether it's coffee, whether it's a latte, whether it's a macchiato, whether it's that third bagel, which maybe you should kind of put down, get those carbs out of there. You want to be summer ready. Folks, for less than $3, subscribe to Jersey City Times, and you'll be automatically enrolled in what's going on with insider stories, columns, and much more. Not just about politics. I know politics gets exhausting, but guess what? It's about real estate, arts and culture, what's going on this summer. That and much more, folks. You get it with less than $3 a month, courtesy of the Jersey City Times. Please subscribe today. All right, let's go to another great column here, commentary here. And I know it was originally published in the New Jersey Monitor. Nice job there by Terrence McDonald, friend of me somehow. I don't know how, but he is. And I know he's a fan of the Jersey City Times. Interesting commentary here. Both Fulop and Gottheimer, who are both Jewish, have some very differing takes about a anti-Semitism bill. Aaron, why is this so significant here, this story?
Well, it's a really interesting issue. I'm not deeply knowledgeable about it, but I have some opinions. I always have opinions, even if I'm not deeply knowledgeable about it.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
And interestingly, I tend to agree more with Fulop on this. There is a definition of anti-Semitism that has been approved by the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And it's a perfectly reasonable definition. And I won't read it now, but from what I understand, Steve Fulop has two problems with it. He believes that it would term any criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic. Gottheimer disagrees with that, but that's one of his critiques of it. In fact, I think that's his main critique of it. Gottheimer says, no, that's not true. The legislation has kind of stopped in Trenton. This has not been passed, but I think it's become maybe it's helping Gottheimer with the Jewish community. I mean, if you're a Jew and you felt anti-Semitism is on the rise, and I think by all objective measures, it has been on the rise since October 7th.
Yeah, that's right.
You're going to reflexively think, this is good. We're going to have a definition of anti-Semitism, and somebody says something that violates it. We can say, hey, you just violated the definition that the New Jersey state legislature has put into effect. There are, to my knowledge, no penalties. You're not going to be arrested by the Jersey City police if you say something anti-Semitic. But the point is, it's sort of it's sort of a touchstone that you can use in a conversation or to call somebody out. I have a real problem with the government defining any words and getting into the language business, except when it comes to defining crimes. So I want you to define assault. I want you to define what murder is. I want you to define, what larceny is. But, it feels very 1984-ish and a slippery slope for us to go into, for the legislature to be defining anti-Semitism or any other perceived slight against any person or group. I think that you define things if they're crimes. Other than that, let the public square decide what anti-Semitism is. I think that's what the First Amendment should all be about. And I think we can all agree. I don't think everybody will agree on what anti-Semitism is, but I think we as adults who talk this out can probably come up with a pretty reasonable definition, and we can consult the dictionaries.
Sure.
But the government, I would think, as a Republican who tends to be more libertarian in your approach, I would assume you might agree that it's probably not a good idea for the government to be defining isms and these types of things. So I think Philip may be the more right person on this issue. And by the way, he has, he's got pretty good bona fides on this. I mean, he's comes from he's Jewish. He comes from, a family of Holocaust survivors. He went to Jewish day school. So I don't think, he can be criticized for a lot of things. One thing you can't criticize Steve Phillip for is not understanding the Jewish perspective on this.
Sure. Well, I'll just say this, and because I know that Representative Gottheimer, and because I've talked about it on my show repeatedly, Aaron, and I'm not sure if you've caught it, but I mean, I've been one of the few people that, went across the river and was in the trenches there on the grounds of Columbia University last year. And I was there live. I took a lot of footage. I talked to people on the ground there. And in fairness to Representative Gottheimer, I mean, he's been really kind of that guy that's out in the forefront about what's going on college campuses. And listen, I'm as big a First Amendment advocate as you are. Certainly, listen, it's you either believe in it or you don't. And, half of the belief of the First Amendment is you have to protect speech even if you don't like it. That's the whole premise of it.
Exactly.
Of the First Amendment. What I would say, though, and I think the reason this resonates so much with Gottheimer, for example, is because he's been the one really out there denouncing what's going on college campuses. I mean, there's no denying what's happened on college campuses since October the 7th of 2023. We saw what went on, across the river at Columbia, at Bernard. Listen, I have some friends from grad school that teach at NYU, and they're Jewish. And I can tell you firsthand some awful things that happened to them going back to last spring semester and last fall. And now we're in the spring 2025 semester. And I mean, again, I want to keep it a family-friendly show, but this bullshit's still going on.
Yeah,
a lot of Jewish faculty and students, and it's crazy. So I think I've been very loud about it.
Yeah, but I don't think a definition passed by a legislature is going to, really have much of an effect on this. I think there's obviously lots of room to criticize Israel, like there is a room to criticize any country in the world. I mean, every country has its warts and its failings. I think that what Jews would tell you, those that support Israel, is that there's a very low level of understanding of the history of Israel, why it exists, how it came into being, what Jewish history is. And, Jews would tell you, rather than being a colonial settler state, Jews are indigenous to the region, just like, the Lenape are indigenous to Jersey City. And I don't think people on the left would say the Lenape don't have rights to Jersey City. If you were to ask most people on the left about the Lenape, they'd say, oh my God, we should give them land in Jersey City. I mean, these were the original people. Well, Jews would make the same argument about their place in the Middle East. So I think that the issue is not, we're sort of getting far afield here, but
sure.
It's the real issue is not whether there's anti-Semitism on campus. I think that goes without saying. There's a great deal of anti-Semitism, although I think Muslims would say there is Islamophobia as well. I don't think, from what I've seen, it's not the same. At least from reading the reports, there haven't been organized groups, sort of chasing down Muslims on campus.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. From what we've seen, and I may be wrong, and if I'm wrong, guys, email me and I'll stand corrected publicly. But we haven't seen that same level. That's not to say there isn't Islamophobia, but the issue is these schools have conduct codes. Columbia, NYU, they are in a position to police, as it were, conduct of their students. And the view from what I hear from most knowledgeable people is we want our students to be able to say whatever they want. They can say that they hate Jews, they hate Israel. Fine. You have that right, because we want our students to feel like they are unfettered in what they're able to say. And by the way, when you're 18 or 20, you're going to hold really strong views. I was pretty much a Marxist at 20.
My God.
What's that?
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I was pretty much a Marxist.
You. Oh my God,
I still think of myself as left of center, but I'm not a Marxist. But I pretty much was, and that's what a lot of kids go through, because you experiment, you try on different ideologies, different philosophies, and we want kids to be able to do that. We want college students to be able to do that. The issue is whether you are harassing other people who don't agree with you. If you're getting in their face because you don't agree with them, if you're making them feel unsafe. Unsafe is not saying I don't like Jews or I don't like Israel. Unsafe is getting in that person's face, chasing them down, telling them you don't belong here. That's the stuff that the schools should be cracking down on. But I don't think a law in Trenton is going to solve that problem.
No, listen, it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. Right before we call it a night here, Aaron, a good piece today. I know it just came out. Shout out to Alexis McDonald. I know one of the great staff there. Folks, again, for less than $3 a month, you can subscribe to great local news in Jersey City. Subscribe to the Jersey City Times today. Obviously, we're hearing a lot about what's coming out in Trenton, man. Budget cuts in Trenton. Obviously, it's mandated by state law. By June 30th, there has to be a state budget signed. Otherwise, the state will shut down. We've lived through that already twice with Chris Christie and John Corzine. So it seems like a lot of local school districts are feeling the crunch now when it comes to dollars coming from Trenton. And we're seeing the Board of Ed in Jersey City, obviously, having to look at some cuts, man, with some of the funding challenges. What are you hearing right now? Great piece there.
Yeah, Alexis did a fantastic job. And that's a great segue to something I wanted to say. Fernando's been so kind to sort of encourage people to subscribe. And right now, with the demise of the Jersey Journal, we're kind of it when it comes to covering the schools. And I want people to understand that, Alexis works real hard. She does an amazing job. And she doesn't work for free, nor should she. She's a really talented and skilled writer. And, so we all need to chip in and pay for this coverage if we want to know what's going on in the schools. This article, you'll learn a lot about school funding and the challenges that the Jersey City schools are facing with budget cuts. This has been a long-running issue. As Jersey City became more affluent, the support that came from the state went down. That was something that Steve Sweeney, actually, we were talking about that earlier. So he was involved in that. S2 was was a seminal piece of legislation that rejiggered funding for the schools from Trenton, and basically said, Jersey City, you're a more affluent city. You now need to pick up more of the tab. So anyway, property taxes are going to be going up again. Not a huge amount, but they're going up again to fund some of this shortfall in state funding. And taxes are already high in Jersey City. We're also covering, school performance. So these issues about school funding, which we talk about in this article that Alexis talks about, school performance, are things that every Jersey City resident, and especially parents, need to be following and getting educated in and weighing in on. There are issues about performance that everybody needs to be aware of. There are issues about funding that everybody needs to be aware of. So I would just encourage people to read Alexis's article that came out today on the new budget. And if you like it, please consider subscribing, because we can't cover these meetings if we can't pay our journalists to do so, and we need your help on that. We're still not breaking even, guys. So we need to be a sustainable news site that helps you guys out there, anybody who's watching, understand what's going on in this city. Otherwise, we have no control. So we want you all to have control.
And folks, you have some options, because again, for less than $3 a month, you can subscribe to great local journalism in Jersey City with the Jersey City Times. And if you want to subscribe for the whole year, it's less than $30. So again, do the math. I wasn't the biggest math student, but you can do the math that you're saving some money, folks. So think about that when it comes to subscribing. Click the subscribe button right at the top at jcitytimes.com. Before we call it a night, man, anything big coming up? Maybe no spoilers, but anything juicy maybe we should be made aware of?
I'm going to have something on CarePoint Health and Christ Hospital coming out. It's a story I've been covering. It is CarePoint, as people probably know, is in bankruptcy, and it's sort of a sordid story of a hospital becoming a cash cow for investors through various machinations, using loopholes in insurance reimbursements and various techniques. CarePoint became a not-for-profit a couple of years ago, and it promptly went into bankruptcy because it had been saddled with a cost structure that simply couldn't be supported. And this is an issue that everybody should be concerned about. It is the safety net hospital in Jersey City. It is the hospital that people who have no insurance go to. It is the hospital that undocumented people go to because they can't get healthcare anywhere else. And I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. I don't think anybody wants a little kid who doesn't have health insurance not to get treated for an illness because their mom and pop brought them here from Mexico or wherever they might have come from. This hospital is a safety net hospital. It's incredibly important. And it is now in bankruptcy. And there are issues about who will take it over and what it could become in the future, and what the cost structure is, and whether it will be sustainable, whether it can remain a safety net hospital in Jersey City into the future. So we will be putting something out on that shortly.
Absolutely, folks. Tune in for that, obviously, with the Jersey City Times. And folks, again, this Monday, check your local listings, of course, but we do start at 6 p.m. Eastern time. I'll have a double main event this Monday on Real Talk at 6:05. Nicholas Luciano, the executive director of Safeway Out, one of the more preeminent domestic violence awareness organizations and shelters in New Jersey. We'll be talking about domestic violence awareness and certainly the resources that he helps provide families each and every day. And even in a state like New Jersey, with some of the strictest domestic violence laws in the country, we're still seeing a very high propensity rate for domestic violence. So we'll talk about that during the 6:05 hour. Then at 7:05, we'll have Guttenberg Mayor Wayne Zitt. Yes, all 2 blocks of Guttenberg, New Jersey, and North Hudson. That's up for re-election this June. So we'll be talking to him at 7:05. Tune in this Monday, folks, again, for the latest edition of Real Talk via Jersey First. Again, folks, I can't say it enough. For less than $30, you can subscribe to the Jersey City Times every month. And again, for the whole year, for less than $30, you'll be enrolled and you'll be notified of all the great content, columns, exclusives, and all the great, really all the great stories that are available in Jersey City life, not just politics, folks. I know it all pisses you off sometimes, but arts, the real estate, quality of life, the summer's coming, summer concert series, the big jazz festival, what's going on during 4th of July. Folks, all that information and much more, you catch it with the Jersey City Times. And of course, he's their editor, the great Aaron Morrill, of course, joining us here. And folks, I am Fernando Uribe, the host of Real Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're talking about Jersey City, we're doing it here on Jersey First TV, of course, on Facebook Live, StreamYard, YouTube, and all of our great social media platforms. Like, comment, and share, folks. Enjoy the rest of March. We'll see you in early April for the next edition of Talking Jersey City here on Facebook Live. Folks, have a great rest of your weekend. Please party responsibly, and we'll see you next time here on Facebook.